let me walk you through briefly what it is that we are doing at NetNumber to try to do our part to help out in this. We have brought to market a family of products which we call Guaranteed Caller. I think Doug is fond of mentioning that it's a pretty crowded namespace these days for how you would name a solution like this. But we've branded ours Guaranteed Caller, and it is a fairly unique family of products in the sense that it covers really all of the phases that we've talked about of stir, shake, and then some. It is, I guess, in the end, I'll come back to this in a minute, dedicated to the premise that once you get to that end state that we've been talking about, it really should be as easy as signing up for the service and getting it. And that has been a guiding focus in how we have put this product together. So very, very briefly, I know this is a crowded looking chart, but if I start at the upper left and look at the national product that we're offering, Guaranteed National. This is the STI-PA and STI-CA. I won't go into all the details here because we have a limited time frame, but this is the national level infrastructure required to run a stir, shake, and trust network within a given country. So typically there'll be one STI-PA and a small number of STI-CAs in a given country. Then we've spent a lot of time talking here about what Doug called phase one, the service provider element of this offer, which we represent as two blocks here, service provider and TDM, and I'll talk about that in a second. The service provider portion of this is the signing and verifying of calls, the real bread and butter of phase one. This is the restoring of trust in the calls that are flowing through the network. The TDM element of this, TDM shaken, is really taking what the industry, I think, as a whole is calling out-of-band shaken and applying that concept to TDM SS7-based calls, where you really can't pass the call signatures through the signaling because of the nature of SS7 signaling. So we'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment. On the middle right of this, Doug mentioned who's next, who's phase two? Well, that's enterprise. I'm going to walk you through this in just a moment. We have an enterprise product that we're POCing at this very moment. And this is based around the idea of delegated call signing. And again, I'll talk about that in a moment. And last but not least, that international phase. We are heavily engaged with a number of international operators right now, working through the nits and grits of this particular one. Now coming back to where I started, which was it really should be as easy as signing up for the service and getting it. The last circle here is a little device we call Cloud Connect, and we think this is kind of the ace in the hole for an awful lot of providers. Our fundamental premise, I guess, is put one of these Cloud Connect boxes in your network, pay your bill, and you're compliant. It's almost that easy. This is a device that essentially interacts with the signaling in the network and our stir, shake, and cloud offer, and delivers the stir, shake, and capability set to you without any further muss or fuss. So we like to think in the end it is as simple as put a Cloud Connect device in your network, pay your bill, and you are compliant. And that's the premise that we've designed this whole family around, and this is simplification is something that we have focused on tremendously. This is a complex technical problem, and our job as a vendor is to remove that complexity from the operators and deliver to them the functionality, not the complexity. The service provider product is, well, gee, I think Chris showed a diagram that had all of the defined functional elements that have been laid out in the standards. Please take my word for it that all of those elements are present here. They've just been arranged into the originating and terminating sides with a little call flow going on between, of course, between the mythical entities Bob and Alice. I would like to mention there's let's see, on the upper right of this chart, there's a block in green called CPS, and we'll come back to that in a minute. So this is fundamentally all of the pieces that are laid out for call signing and call verification. This is deployed on our cloud, or it can be deployed on your cloud if you are an operator. So we like to say our cloud, your cloud, or a hybrid of the two. Because it's cloud-based, because it's cloud-native and container-based, it's essentially infinitely scalable horizontally to the limits of the infrastructure that you're on. So this is scalable to whatever transaction volume you have in your network. And I like to point out to people, of course, even though we've shown the originating and the terminating as separate sets of blocks, of course, every network does both. And this is all actually deployed together. And together, this is the service provider offer that we have. The TDM portion of this is really a very, very simple increment. And the idea couldn't be simpler if it tried. If you can't pass the call signatures through the SIP signaling because you're using TDM, why not pass them through an out-of-band entity in the cloud, a CPS, a call placement service? This is a simple HTTP access, fundamentally a simple HTTP accessed web database, even right down to using simple HTTP methods like post and get. Simply post the identity header from the origination and pull it down on the termination. It's too easy. Stir Shaken does have a lot of tremendous complexity in it in various places. This isn't one of them. This is a very, very simple idea. I think what I'd like to point out here is that our service provider offer includes a CPS with every system sold. So when you buy a what is fundamentally a SIP and IP-based solution, you get the TDM element of it just included. So you're enabled for both IP and TDM when you buy this solution from NetNumber. Let's talk about enterprises for a minute. Doug mentioned this is phase 2. Now, again, if we wanted to dig into the complexities that drive what I'm showing you on the chart here, we could spend a long time. But let's just talk about the fundamental simplicity and the way this actually is intended to work at a high level. It's a very, very simple idea. A service provider who is already approved, who in the lingo is an approved Shaken entity, can delegate that signing authority to a trusted third party. In this case, I'm showing the third party being NetNumber, but the service provider could have purchased that service from NetNumber and be reselling it to customers of theirs. So we can operate it or you can operate it. It really doesn't matter to how the system operates in real time. So the idea here, really, really simple. If I trust you and you trust them, then I trust them. So Doug mentioned that an enterprise call is a very complex entity, and when that arrives at an originating service provider, there is the question of, can I really trust that? If that service provider, however, has made a commercial arrangement with somebody like NetNumber to actually go out and do the hard work, the heavy lifting I think that Chris was talking about, to verify that enterprise is who they say they are, that they're a valid business, we know what the TN range is that they're allowed to use, we understand the relationship there, then when that enterprise places a call, they can access our cloud service, generate an RCD passport, I'm going to come back to that in a minute, but essentially generate an enterprise signature, attach that to their invite and send that into the originating service provider. Now that service provider has a business arrangement with NetNumber, so they know if NetNumber has attested to the validity of that enterprise call, then they can trust it and they can give it an A attestation and send it along the network to the terminating provider. So very, very simple idea. If I trust you and you trust them, I trust them. That's really how this works at a high level. Now, Doug mentioned as we go through doing enterprise, we could actually take the next step and make this even better. We can enrich this with additional information. And that's what this RCD passport is. RCD standing for Rich Call Data. This is an additional JSON structure that allows us to attach a logo for the corporation, a presentation of the name in the way that they want it, as opposed to the way it may show up in a CNAM database, and a reason for the call. And this is it's an IETF draft at this point, but it's a nearly standardized mechanism now for passing this information across from the enterprise to the originating service provider, and ultimately all the way through to the terminating service provider and onto the terminating display. So that's really the enterprise story. We are offering this product, of course, we're calling it Guaranteed Caller Enterprise, and we're running POCs on this right now. Finally, of course, the last. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed one here. I'm just gonna come back to this one for a moment and indicate that this is, if you can, I don't know if you can see my cursor here, but this is the sort of classic trunk-connected enterprise. A human being has actually picked up the phone and placed a call, and we've just walked through how that works. But of course, in the enterprise world, there is a huge number of calls that are actually generated by call centers on the behalf of an enterprise. So the calls are actually coming into the originating service provider. asserting somebody else as the caller ID than the number from which the call is actually coming. And I won't go through all the complexities in this. I just wanted to mention here that this is a scenario that has been fully thought through and is fully supported by Guaranteed Caller Enterprise. All right, the last stage, international. As Doug mentioned, the existence of STIR/SHAKEN here in the United States has manufactured a problem for carriers overseas, and a number of them have been forward-looking enough to actually realize this ahead of anybody telling them that. And several of them have approached us and said, we know you're in the STIR/SHAKEN business. We really could use your help in resolving this problem. And we are now working through that as part of our Guaranteed Caller International product, which really leverages the same basic technology I talked about for enterprise. A approved SHAKEN provider arranges makes a business arrangement with somebody like NetNumber's Guaranteed Caller International and leaves to us the hard work of determining which calls deserve an A attestation and which don't. And in the end, the premise is the same. If I trust you and you trust them, I trust them. So what happens in the end here is that we work with the overseas provider on behalf of the terminating carrier in the United States to select those calls which we know we can give an A attestation to, sign those calls, and pass a SHAKEN passport along with them as they wend their way across the United States. What this means is we're signing these calls at the point of origination as opposed to trying to filter these things out when they arrive in the United States and do the best we can there. We actually make use of the knowledge that is available in the originating network or the originating IPX, as may be the case, to do this work. All right, so that's the international part of this. Now, I just quickly wanted to mention our deployment models on this. I mentioned we have our cloud, your cloud, and a hybrid. And our cloud is really easy. All of the elements are implemented in our cloud, and you simply implement an API and access it. This is this can be really easy. Simply implement this API, connect up to our cloud, and you're done. Very, very simple there. Oops, I'm sorry, went too far there. Your cloud, basically the same idea, except we can take all of those blocks and we can move them from our cloud to your cloud exactly as it sounds. These are portable, functional blocks, and they can be deployed on a particular container standard infrastructure anywhere that we want them to be. So this provides, of course, a high degree of ownership, physical security, and a lot of other things which are important to a number of providers. Finally, we have a wonderful, truly secure hybrid model here, which is really your cloud with all of the necessary public internet APIs retained up in our cloud so that your network can be fully locked down and secured. And won't go through all the words and the details here, but that's the fundamental premise there. So this is a webinar, not a sales pitch, so I'm not going to run through all of this stuff here. But I just wanted to leave you with the thought that coming back to Melanie's original question, what is NetNumber doing in this space? Well, we are participating vigorously. We believe we have brought to market one of the most comprehensive offers that is presently available, and it's incredibly flexible. And it's from a vendor with two attributes I'd really like to just close with here. One is a vendor with deep SS7 signaling expertise. And we need to remember there's a lot of SS7 still out there in the world. And SS7 without a proper solution really is a blocker for STIR/SHAKEN. So this is an important point. And the other thing is, and there's a reason we're here on this call today, NetNumber has been driving the standards work along with Chris and the team for quite some time. So we are one of the industry thought leaders and one of the industry standard drivers for the work that is happening in this area. So we have long and deep roots in the STIR/SHAKEN business. We have long and deep roots in SS7 signaling, and of course we've been in the SIP space for a great many years.